Why by all material means, by so much of material advancement, economic comfort, technological excellence, the human race has not been able to experience what it has been striving for. And one of the personality, very eminent personality, very artistically and very scientifically uh, quotes. I'll quote one very prominent personality. She's like the mother of humanity, you know, the very distinguished Mother Teresa. I know most of you know Mother Teresa. You would have heard about Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa के बारे में सुना? नहीं सुना? She is such a compassionate person who selflessly served millions. So she, in her conclusion or in her maturity, she said that there is actually the starvation is not because of the hunger of the belly. The starvation is due to the hunger of heart. Hunger of heart. And she said that the greatest disease which the world is surrounded today, of course, many years back, many decades back, she said is what she originally said is not TB or leprosy, but those are bygone diseases. Even in today's day, the greatest disease is not cancer or cardiac arrest. Why? Because we can cure physically the disease with medicines. But what remains uncured? What remains unattended is the disease of being lonely, loneliness. This is the disease of this age of DNA. It is being that every individual is unwanted, is uncared, is unloved, and there is no cure for this loneliness, for his despair, his hopelessness. So Mother Teresa said that the poverty is not of food, but it is of spirituality. The poverty is not of food grains, that is abundant. But what is really lacking is spirituality. So she concluded, she said, as there is hunger for love, as there is hunger for God. We see the most advanced country, the most, country which provides global leadership, undisputedly is USA. Our Prime Minister just recently visited USA. And if he gets accreditation from USA, every Indian is very elated, very happy. Why? Because US is the global leader. The US Constitution says, in God we trust. In God we trust. But what is their definition or understanding of God? And how much are they able to foster relationship with their God? This is what there is lacking. But for us, in this Bharat Bhumi, in this glorious land of saints and sages, we have the great wisdom. We have the wisdom of Vedic scriptures, which connects us to the Supreme God, to the Supreme Absolute Truth. And crest among all the literatures is one literature, which is Bhagavad Gita. And in Bhagavad Gita, amongst all the topics, the topic that we are discussing is very, very little. It is the fourth chapter, which speaks about the transcendental knowledge, Divya. So Krishna is enlightening. Krishna, while he's speaking this knowledge to Arjuna, and through Arjuna, he is enlightening and elevating all the human race from the lower mode of passion and ignorance. He is giving the opportunity to all of us to purify and protect and also perfect our consciousness, to situate in the mode of goodness, so that the human race can be free from the danger of fall down, or rather break down, which is yoga nishta. Very, very interesting, very relevant topic. In this chapter, Krishna reveals about himself. Krishna reveals the knowledge about the eternity of relationship. Already Krishna has given the eternity of existence of the living entity in the second chapter, where he gave the Atmagyan. But in this chapter, Krishna is giving the eternal education. This transcendental knowledge is nothing else but eternal education. And how this education can be received? It can only be received in eternal relationship, which is the science of yoga, the science of supreme yoga. So one who has fostered this relationship, one who is situated in this relationship, one who is in this yoga, he can be the recipient of this knowledge. Others, Prabhupada says, it is like licking the honey from outside the mother. They cannot receive the rasa or the taste of it. So quickly, I'll give you an overview, although we have conducted 2 sessions on this chapter. So the first section of this chapter is from verse 1 till verse 10. So far we have covered 4 verses, and today we will see from 5th that Krishna will speak. Obviously, Krishna was speaking, but Arjuna put in an engineering question, a technical question, or a technical snag. Like when you are about to take off from the flight, the aircraft has come on the runway and it is about to take off. It is speeding up, but there is some technical snag. So what is the technical snag? Arjun puts a question mark. Why Arjun puts that question is also very interesting. To clear up the doubts of all people who are very apprehensive, cynical, to accept the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the first 10 verses from verse 1 till 10, it speaks about Krishna Tattva. First Krishna spoke that he gave this knowledge to whom? He gave this knowledge to the sun god Vivaswan. Now we are very privileged. We have a 6-month-old student hearing Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna. The first 10 verses, Krishna speaks about the Tattva. The Tattva means the truth, the essential, eternal, everlasting truth about the Jiva, the Ishvara, and the relationship between Ishvara and Jiva. What is that eternal relationship? It is called Yoga. People are very enthusiastic about union, communion, where one is never separated. So that relationship Krishna is offering through this chapter, which is eternal relationship. So Krishna will speak how he is different from all other living entities. how he is Ishvara and all others are subordinate to him. And Krishna will also speak in this section that why he appears again and again. What is the purpose of his appearance? So all these details Krishna reveals. That is the Krishna Gyan or the Paratattva Gyan Krishna will reveal in this section. Then from 11 to 15, how Krishna reciprocates with different people, those who approach him differently. But he does not, uh, he is not like, a machine. And in machine, if you push the button, it will act in only one minute. So how people approach him, Krishna reciprocates with them accordingly. Very interesting section. And then further Krishna explains about the actions, the activities of one who is in
Is the sound there or I am only the one who can't hear?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I think Prabhuji got disconnected, so I have written a message. Hopefully they will join in next Prabhuji.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Sorry, there was a internet interruption. So in this chapter, it has 5 sections, and we will be trying to cover the first section. Let us see how much we can do. So in the first verse of this chapter, Krishna spoke about this knowledge which is eternal education, and this knowledge has existed from the very beginning of the human race. And Krishna spoke this knowledge yogam. All the 3 verses of the first 3 verses is talking about yogam. And then Krishna spoke that this yoga was scattered. Sakalena mahata yogo nashta parantapa. So this yoga was scattered. Why? Because of the influence of time. And there was not so committed personality. But even if it was scattered and it was lost, Krishna is very keen to revive it. So he chose his dearmost devotee and friend, Arjuna. He said that Yoga Prokta Puratana, that very old ancient science. What is that science? What is yoga? That science of eternal relationship. So this transcendental knowledge is nothing else but the knowledge of the living entity's relationship with the Supreme Lord. So Krishna is very keen to revive it, to re-establish it. And this time he chooses Arjuna. Previously, he gave the same knowledge to sun god Vivaswami. So as soon as Arjuna heard this, like if I say that I gave this knowledge to Jawaharlal Nehru, I taught Bhagavad Gita to Jawaharlal Nehru. So you will say, how, sir? You are contemporary. You are of this age, my age, maybe 5 or 10 years older than me. How can you teach someone who died 50 years back? So same engineering question. So Arjuna is inquiring in the last verse we saw. Arjuna put this breaker, this road breaker, by inquiring that how do I understand? You seem to be contemporary to me. It seems impossible for me to accept that the sun god, which is existing for millions of years back, how did you speak this Bhagavad Gita to him, this science of yoga to him? Katham etad vijaniyam. How do I understand this? That in the beginning, you instructed this science of relationship to sun god. So we will see the answer today. Krishna speaks in the 5th verse. So we will continue from the 5th verse. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tava charjuna tani hamve sarvani natvam veta parantapa. So Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, and what he said, Bahuni me vyatitani. My dear Arjuna, Bahuni means many, many. Bahuvachan, plural. There have been many, many births. Of whom? Of you, Arjuna, that is understandable. And also, both you and me. That means if the Supreme Lord takes birth, here Vyasdev is saying Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. He is not saying Krishna Uvacha. The Supreme Lord, he takes birth. What it means? Many, many births. So that means he takes birth, that means he has to die. He says, then he gives another bombshell. First he says that many, many births I and you both have taken. Then he says, I can remember them all. Tani aham ved sarvani. Ved means to know, knowledge. So I am cognizant of all of my appearances, of all my previous work. Natvam veta parantapa. He is telling Arjuna, he is referring Arjuna as Parantapaha. Parantapa means who can subdue his enemies. But even you might be able to subdue your enemies, Arjuna, but you cannot remember your past births. So Krishna is saying that the personality of Godhead said, many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot. O subduer of the enemy. This is not new. This is not for the first time Krishna is speaking this knowledge, the science of soul. He has already spoken about it in the 2nd chapter. Which is the verse? In which verse Krishna spoke? Keep Gita with you. Where Krishna said that already we have passed through many births. Where Krishna spoke that? Which verse is that? Quickly. We have already studied Bhagavad Gita, second chapter. In second chapter, which verse Krishna said? Okay, yeah, that is also there. But he already said that we existed in the past and we will exist in the future. Hare Krishna. Which verse is that? Where Krishna had already declared this. Here, there is something more to add to that. So Krishna previously only spoke about the imperishable nature of the soul. But there is a new dimension which Krishna will add today, that the embodied soul is passing through many bodies, but that is not the case for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Come on, quickly, which verse? So much time, the time is over. Huh? That is the embodied soul is passing from one body to another body. He's talking about you existed in the past, you are there in the future, and you will be, you are present. Na tu evaham chatu nasam, na tvam neme dhanam. There was never a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any one of us cease to be. So what is the difference here? Krishna is saying that both of us have had many births. But what is the difference between a human and what is the difference between the Supreme? That the Supreme Lord is cognizant, is omniscient, to remember all his appearances, rather all his births, all his activities. Whereas the conditioned soul not able to know what he was in his previous life. So Krishna said, many you and I can remove them. How Prabhupada quotes from Brahma Samhita that in Brahma Samhita 5:33 we have information not take birth actually. The Lord and why he comes down for a very specific purpose to fulfill some certain mission. And when the mission is accomplished, he returns. So where is the difference? There is a major difference. If we can penetrate into that difference between a conditioned soul and the Supreme Person. So Prabhupada quotes this verse from Brahma Samhita that we have information of many incarnations of the Lord as is stated. So why Prabhupada is quoting Brahma Samhita? Because Brahmaji is the most intelligent of all human race. And Brahmaji's knowledge cannot be compared with any other species in any form of life. What to speak of, even in the human form of life, or amongst the demigods, or any saint or sage. The perfection in the human form of life is 78% of 78% perfection, and that perfection is with Brahmaji. So Brahmaji in his maturity, he realized that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Bhagavad, is Advaitam, is Achyutam, Anadim, and is Anantarupam. Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. That the Supreme Lord is Advaita. Advaita means that he is not different. What it means? Is it the same that what we are? No. There is no difference between the personality and his body. Advaita. We have the duality. What is the duality? We are conditioned soul. Why do we say we are conditioned soul? Because our body is material. It takes birth and it dies. Whereas the Supreme Lord does not have any difference between his body and his Swarupa. So he is Advaita. There's no difference. We have difference in our body and in our real self. That is the Swarup. But the Supreme Lord is non-different. That means his body is also spiritual. That is the first level of understanding which Brahmaji is revealing. Is Advaitam and is Achyutam. You know the word Achyutam? We discussed in the first chapter. What is Achyutam? He is infallible. Infallible. The body is within the jurisdiction of the body, never comes under the control of the material worlds. So he is Achyutam. Why? Because he is the controller of the universe. Prabhupada gives a very classic example to understand this. Like we all see a prison house. We all see prison house, jail. And as soon as we hear the word prison house, we think that whoever is in the prison house is a prisoner, isn't it? And he is subject to stringent controls and laws and regulations. But in the prison house, there is the superintendent of prison. So the rules and regulations of the prison house, is it applicable to his inmates? So he is Achyutam. Under any condition, he is not subject to the rules and regulation or the material norms. He is Achyutam and he is Anadim. Anadim means that he is the original person. Adim. Adim means original. So he is the original person from whom everything else has emanated. So very interestingly, he is Advaitam. He is not different. Not different from his, not different inside and outside. We are different inside and outside. Inside we are spirit, outside we are matter. That is why Mother Kunti in her prayer, she says, Alaksham sarva bhutanam antar bahir avasthitam. Namaste purusham tvadyam Ishvara prakrite param. Alaksham sarva bhutanam antar bahir avasthitam. Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 8th verse, and I think this is the 19th verse. So she says that you are antar bahir avasthitam. You are the same inside and outside. Why? Because there is no difference. That is Advaitam. Inside is Supreme Spirit, and outside the body is also spiritual. So it's Advaitam. And his body is never subject to the external material laws. How do we take our bodies? How do we take bodies? How do we get bodies? Yes, as per our karma. We are forced to accept body according to our karma. And how does the law of karma work? Within the three modes. Only three modes within the purview of Kala, time, Kala Chakra. But for Krishna, the three modes, he is the controller. In the 9th chapter, he will speak, Maya Dyakshena Prakriti Suyate Se Charachanam. That this material nature is working under my superintendence. The same word. Is superintendent. He is the superintendent of the material modes. So how can he be under the control or clutches of the material mode? So he is Achyuta and he is Anadim. He is the original person and he is Ananta Rupam. He appears in multifarious forms. Many forms. He can appear from anywhere and in any form. That is the variegatedness of the Supreme Personality. Although expanded into unlimited form, he is Adyam Puran Purusham. Still the same original. Puran means he is the oldest. But in spite of the Supreme Lord being oldest, if you see a person growing in age, he will show many symptoms. What is the first symptom? That his hair will start growing gray, from black to gray. His skin will also undergo some change. So many deformations may start to come in his body. But when Krishna was here in this Dhara Bhumi, in this planet Earth, he was always youthful. Prabhupada said that at the battle of Kurukshetra, his age was minimum 90. And he performed his pastime till the age of 125. But did we ever see even any one gray hair in Krishna? No, never. So he is Adyam Puran Purusham, but he is Navayavanam. He is ever youthful. He never grows in age. Why? Because the mode does not work on him. The Prakriti cannot act on him. So he remains. And he cannot be achieved, or he cannot be attained, or he cannot be understood by the Vedas. Vedeshu Durlabham. Durlabham is hardly, very rare to be obtained or known. But Adurlabham, Durlabham means difficult. But Adurlabham means which is not difficult. That means which is easy. What is easy? Atma Bhakta. He can be known by his devotees. Which kind of devotees? Whose Atma is Krishna. Atma Bhakta. Vedeshu Durlabham, Adurlabham, Atma Bhakta. This is the only way Krishna could be understood. So he is Bhaktas, whose Atma is Krishna. Such personality of Godhead, Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So Prabhupada is giving this realization of Brahmaji to emphasize that how Krishna, his birth is uncommon. His birth is actually not birth. His birth is like avatar. He descends. He appears. He is still the same original, the oldest, and the person always appearing as the fresh youth. Such eternal, blissful, all-knowing form of the Lord are usually not understood even by the best Vedic scholars. Prabhupada is quoting Brahmaji. Even Brahmaji failed to understand Krishna. So what to speak about others? But they are always manifest to pure, unalloyed devotees. So Brahmaji became a pure devotee and the secret was revealed to him. The Prabhupada quotes yet another verse from Brahma Samhita. Very interesting. Prabhupada is quoting from the authority of Lord Brahma to prove that how Krishna says, or he's claiming that he remembers all of his past appearances, his birth, but others cannot. Ramadimurti Shukala Niyamena Tishtan Nana Avataram Akarod Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Sambhavat Parama Pumanyo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. You are on the same page? You are able to see where I am reading, from where I am discussing? You know the page number? Yeah. So these are the compositions of Brahma. Brahmaji's prayer. His realization after he had the audience of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And not only he had the audience of the Supreme Lord, he had the audience of the material energy and also the internal energy. He could see the sum total of everything. And then he says that I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda Krishna, who is always situated in various incarnations. So please try to understand why Prabhupada is emphasizing again and again from the Brahma Samhita prayers that his birth is not like the birth of an ordinary conditioned soul. His birth is his appearance as an avatar, as an incarnation. He appears, he descends. And he descends in various multifarious forms. And what are the various forms? Incarnations such as Rama, Narsimha, and many sub-incarnations. So many incarnations. How many incarnations Krishna appears? Any number, count? Any idea? Any guesses? Pranav, how many incarnations? Huh? 9.
6 type of observers.
Where did you get this figure 9 from? No, it is not 9. It is called Dasha Avatar. 10. You have seen dances, performances by Jayadev Goswami. In schools, in colleges, in cultural shows, there is this Dasha Avatar play. Have you seen? Matsya Avatar, then Kurma Avatar, then Narsimha Avatar, then Vaman Avatar, Parshuram Avatar, all this. So these are round. Yes, Pranav. What does our Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharya speak? How many incarnations the Supreme Lord has?
Many incarnation, Prabhuji. Mainly there are 6
What does
types.
that mean? That I also know.
6 types.
Wait. Here. This here. Yes, Ramya. 6. That is 6. Category is 6. 6 categories. 6 or 5? 6. But how many? What is the count? Yes. Like as many waves appear in the ocean. As how many waves appear in the ocean? Can anyone count the number of waves appearing in the ocean? Before one settles, there is another one coming. So there is no count. So that is why he says, Nana avatar makarod bhuvaneshu kintu. And many sub-incarnations as well. But who is the original personality of Godhead is known as Krishna. And who incarnates personally also. Krishna Swayam Sambhavat Parama Pumanyo. Although many of his incarnation come, but the original person also comes. That is Swayam. He comes Swayam. Krishna Swayam comes. So in the Vedas also it is said that the Lord, although one without a second, manifests himself in innumerable forms. He is like the Vaidurya stone. So Prabhupada is comparing his appearance to the Vaidurya stone. This is, Vaidurya stone is not found in this material world. This is a gem, a stone, which changes many colors. Yet, which changes colors. Prabhupada is mentioning here, which changes colors. How many colors you can have from this stone? As much as you desire. What is that called? A prism. That also cannot be compared to the weather. Which changes color yet one. The forms who is not a devotee. This transcendental knowledge by Krishna is emphasizing so much can only be received, this eternal education can only be received with one who is in eternal relationship, who is situated, is well established in yoga. But by a simple study of the Vedas, Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham Adbhatto. Devotees like Arjuna are constant companions of the Lord. And whenever the Lord incarnates, the associate devotee also incarnate in order to serve the Lord in different capacities. So his they feature the S comes along. It is under some millions that the sun was also the internet is little unstable. So even if it disconnects, kindly remain patient. I'll try to come back. So here, through the realization of Brahmaji, Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing that the living entity in the conditioned form, he has to appear or he has to pass one body to another body according to his karma. But those who are associates of the Supreme Lord, they are always present in his pastime, in his lila, as an associate. So Prabhupada is saying Arjuna is one of these devotees, and in this verse it is understood that some millions of years ago, when Lord Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to the sun god Vivaswan, Arjuna in a different capacity was also present. That is what Krishna spoke in the second chapter. Na tu evaham jatu nasam, na tvam neme janadipa, na chaiva na bhavishyama, sarve vayamataparam. Second chapter, 12th verse. That there was never a time when I did not exist, nor you, Arjuna. Nor shall we cease to exist in the future. What to speak of present? We are already there. So the individuality and the existence of the soul can never be compromised. It always exists. But the difference between the Lord and the Arjuna is that the Lord remembered the incident whereas Arjuna could not remember. What is the reason behind this? What Krishna is speaking here? That I can remember Arjuna, but you cannot remember. What is the criteria? There must be some criteria. Or Krishna has reserved right that he can only know and others cannot. What is the reason? That the Supreme Lord says that he can remember, whereas Arjuna you cannot remember. That is the difference between the part and parcel living entity and the Supreme Lord. I will come to part and parcel later. But what is the prerogative that the Supreme Lord does not forget and the living entity forgets? Yeah, participate. What is the reason?
Because we have limitation about all our senses.
Sorry?
Our senses are imperfect.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, Manoram Prabhu.
So, Prabhuji, materially conditioned soul, he changes the body, So Prabhuji, he forgets, but Krishna's body and soul, they are not different. So he always remain eternally the same. That is why he
Yes.
can remember.
That is the reason. Because as the living entity changes the body, he forgets. And there is a difference between the body and the self. He forgets. But the Supreme Lord, there is no difference between the body and the self. That will become more evident in the next verse. So he remembers. Yes. And what is the, thank you. And then Prabhupada says that Arjuna could not remember. That is the difference between the part and parcel living entity and the Supreme Lord. Why it is said that our relation is like the part and parcel. What it means to be part and what it means to be parcel. I have explained this before. But let me see how much is understood. The relationship between the living entity and the Supreme Lord is like the part and parcel. Part, you understand? What does it mean? Part, it has separate existence, isn't it? That is why it is part, na? Otherwise it will be whole. And parcel means that although it is separate, but it is integral. समझ में है? जैसे एसी है, एसी में दो यूनिट है, इंडोर और आउटडोर. तो दोनों क्या है? पार्ट है, बट दोनों क्या है? पार्सल भी है, क्योंकि दोनों के बिना एसी विल नॉट फंक्शन. So what it means, it is the hypothetical example, not the perfect example, but I'm giving you just one example. So what it means to be part and what it means to be parcel. Yeah, apply your intelligence. What it means to be part, Prabhupada is saying here. That is the difference between the part and the parcel living entity and the Supreme Lord. Why we are always termed as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Let them think. Yes, बोलिए. तो मैं वही पूछा हूँ ना, वो पाठ का मतलब क्या है? हाँ? तो who? We. So how we relate to the Supreme Lord? What relates to Supreme Lord? Body? Soul. So how it is part? अगर ऐसा होता, तो if 10 parts are there, 10 souls come, then the super soul is lost. Like if you have 100 rupee note and you distribute 10 people 10 rupees, it is gone. Is it like that? That part is there. What it means to be part? Think. Apply your intelligence. What is part? Huh? Sorry? Senses? Part का मतलब है it is separate. Like a nut. Nut. And a board. Are they separate or not? So it is part.
Prabhuji, you are muted, Prabhuji.
Sorry. You have to bear today. I don't know why the internet is not stable here today. So part means that it is infinitesimal as compared to the whole. Now what is the value of part as compared to the whole? It is insignificant. Okay. Now what is parcel? Yes, Manoram Prabhu? Scientist? Spiritual scientist.
Prabhuji, parcel means inclusive in terms of quality. So the Prabhuji, parcel means it is inclusive of something. So we are qualitatively same to the Supreme Lord. So that is why we are inclusive in terms of quality with the Supreme, Prabhuji.
Although not very clear to what you are speaking, but what I could hear, yes, you are somewhere on the path. Who would like to answer? Yes, Monica. Little louder. इनको तो सुनाई नहीं देगा जो online. Yes, she is giving a very practical example. Example of sun and the sun rays. What is the sun rays? It is part. It is coming from the sun. But as many sun rays come from the sun, is the sun divided? No. And does the sun loses the value? And all the sun rays clubbed together, compared together, can it equate with the sun? No. And the sunshine or the sun ray is the parcel of the sun. That's a good example. So it is always the relationship is of the part and parcel. That is the difference between the part and parcel, living entity, and the Supreme Lord. Although Arjuna is addressed herein as the mighty hero. What is the word? Mighty hero? Huh? Huh? Parantapa, mighty hero. Why mighty hero? Because he can subdue all his enemies. Who can subdue the enemies? He is unable to recall what had happened in his previous birth, in his previous past birth. Therefore, a living entity, however great he may be in his material estimation, can never equal to the Supreme Lord. Anyone who is a constant companion of the Lord is certainly a liberated person. So conditioned person can never know. But he cannot, even if one is liberated, still he cannot know. He cannot be equal to the Lord. The Lord is described in the Brahma Samhita as infallible Achyuta. Prabhupada is giving the explanation, which means he never forgets himself. Even though he is in material contact. Therefore, the Lord and the living entity can never be equal in all respect, even if the living entity is liberated as Arjuna. So this story is very false, which says, Soham. I and the Supreme are the same. They can never be same. Although Arjuna is a devotee of the Lord, he sometimes forgets the nature of the Lord. But by the divine grace, a devotee can at once understand the infallible condition of the Lord. That is why Arjuna addressed Krishna as. What did Arjuna address Krishna as? Are you hearing? What did I speak? Attention is somewhere else. Tell me which verse is this? Prabhupada is saying, although Arjuna is a devotee of the Lord, he sometimes forgets the nature of the Lord. But by the divine grace, the same thing has happened. That Arjuna forgets the nature of the Lord. But by the divine grace, a devotee can at once understand the infallible condition of the Lord. Where it is there in Bhagavad Gita? We've already covered that section. Holy Ganesh. You have heard, but your attention is not there. Absorption is not there. Yes, Suman? हाँ बताओ. Very famous verse. First chapter. Senayor Bhiyor Madhe Ratham Sthapayame Achyut. The Lord is becoming the chariot driver. So is he in the supreme position? No. Arjuna is not considering him in the supreme personality of Godhead. But by the divine grace, he knows that his position is never fallible. So he addresses him as the term Ratham Sthapya Me Achyut. This is God. See, Prabhu, we can see the Shastra clearly now. What Prabhupada is explaining is based on what is the interaction going on between Krishna and Arjuna. Nothing else. He is not putting from his own thought. It is already there. This is what Bhagavad Gita is. That therefore the Lord and the living entity can. Arjuna, although the devotee sometimes forgets the nature of the Lord. Unless and until he forgets the nature of the Lord, how can he ask the Lord to become the chariot driver? Can he ask the Lord to become the chariot driver? No. But by the divine grace, a devotee can at once understand the infallible condition of the Lord. And very beautifully he says, both things in the same verse. Senayor Bhiyor Madhe Ratham Sthapya Me Achyut. Whereas a non-devotee or a demon cannot understand this transcendental nature. Prabhupada is checkmating. Now, who can understand? Only a loving devotee can understand. Prabhupada says a non-devotee means, who is a non-devotee? A non-devotee is a demon. Or a non-devotee or a demon cannot understand the. That means one who fails to understand the transcendental nature of the Lord is a non-devotee. That means he is a. Consequently, these descriptions of the Gita cannot be understood by demoniac brains. Again, Prabhupada is emphasizing. That is why people say Gita तो समझ में नहीं आता. कैसे समझ में? नहीं समझ में. हाँ? ये क्या कंटेंट है? आर्ट क्या है? नॉन डिवोटी है. और दिमाग क्या है? डिमोनियक है. Krishna remembered acts which were performed by him millions of years before. What is the proof? What is the proof that Krishna remembered millions of 311 trillion 20 billion years ago? Yeah, that's no problem. Online is, entry, exit is all free. The condition is those who are in the class. Okay. So Prabhupada is saying that, but Arjuna could not, despite the fact that both Krishna and Arjuna are eternal in nature. We may also note herein that the living entity forgets everything due to the change of his body. That is the reason. As body changes, the living entity forgets everything. This last. But the Lord remembers because he does not change his Sachidanand body. He is Advaita. Advaita means there is no difference between him and his body. Which means there is no distinction between his body and himself. Everything in relation to him is the spirit. Whereas the conditioned soul is different from the material body. And because the Lord's body and the self are identical, His position is always different from that of the ordinary living entity, even when he descends to the material platform. The demons cannot adjust themselves to this transcendental nature of the Lord, which the Lord himself explains in the following verse. So this is the difference. Understood? What is the difference? That there is no difference between the Lord inside and outside. There is no body and soul in separate existence. It is the one. We have three levels. We have the gross body, we have the subtle body, and then we have the spirit soul. But the Supreme Lord is comprised of only spiritual aspect. And whenever he appears, in whatever multifarious forms he appears, he never forgets. And he is not forced to appear. He never takes any material form. His form is always spiritual. यहाँ तक समझ में आया? Then Krishna speaks in the next verse, makes it more clearer. Ajo api san avyayatma bhutanam ishvaro api san prakritim swam adhisthaya sambhavami atma maya. So Krishna is explaining how this is for him, how this position he has. So he says, Ajo api san. Krishna, although he takes birth, he says, but I am unborn. Aja. Ja means to take birth. And Aja means one who does not take birth. So he is unborn. And he is avyay atma. Vyay means to be spent or to be deteriorating. But avyay means which cannot be spent or which cannot deteriorate. Which cannot deteriorate or which cannot be spent is spirit. Matter deteriorates, isn't it? There are 6 changes. Shad vikar. The body takes birth, it grows, then gradually it remains stable for some time, then it reproduces, then it starts to dwindle and finally dies. So what happened? It is vyaya. It is always depreciating or deteriorating, isn't it? That is why we say 1-year-old child. What it means? That 1 year of his age is gone. He's old. Why do we say old? Prabhupada asked, what do you mean an old man? Someone said that Swamiji, you are very old. How will you be able to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world? So Prabhupada asked that reporter, what do you mean by old? What is the understanding of an old man? What it means to be old? Yeah. Old means one who is near to death. Isn't it? Can anyone who is in young age say that he cannot die young? So everyone is near to death every moment. Right or wrong? The person who is in bodily consciousness is old. One who is at the spiritual consciousness is never old. So Krishna says that I am avyay atma. His body is also avyay. That means it cannot deteriorate. There cannot be any change in his body. And even though he is ajo apisan avyay atma, he is bhutanam ishvaro apisan. Bhutanam means among all the living entity. What is his position? Ishvara. He is the controller of all. And how he appears? Prakritim swam adhisthaya. I appear in my original form, in my transcendental body. Sambhavami atmaya. By his own maya. Maya Shakti. Which Maya Shakti? It is the Yoga Maya or the internal potency. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. So please try to understand. It is a little technical, and it is not like us that we are forced to take the material body, which has changes every moment. And as it takes birth, it finally dwindles and dies. But that is not the case with the Supreme Personality of God. The Lord has spoken about the peculiarity of his birth, although he may appear like an ordinary person. Like if Dinesh ji also comes and sits here. But if is he a student? No, he is a professor. His position in IRI, does it change? It does not change. He remembers everything of his many past births, whereas a common man cannot remember what he has done a few hours before. If I ask you 1 month back, today is what? 24th of June. 24th of May, 8:50 p.m. Where were you? Can you answer? It will be very difficult. If I ask you 1 year back, where were you? It will be very more difficult. So what we have, what is our tendency? Forgetfulness. The tendency of everyone in this material world is to forget, not to forgive. Do we forgive? That we remember. पता है क्या कहा था तुमने 2 साल पहले? What 2 साल पहले? 10 साल पहले? That we don't. So one cannot remember what he has done even a few hours before. If someone is asked what he did exactly the same time 1 day earlier, it would be very difficult for a common man to answer immediately. He would surely have to dredge his memory to recall what he was doing exactly at the same time 1 day before. And yet men often dare claim to be God or Krishna. So this is the audacity. You understand of audacity? Dusahas. One should not be misled by such meaningless claims. Then again, the Lord explains his prakriti or his form. So prakriti means his form. For us, the prakriti means the material modes. So prakriti means nature as well as the swarupa. Swarupa means the original form or one's form. The Lord says that he appears in his own body. He does not change his body as the common living entity changes from one body to another. The conditioned soul may have one kind of body in the present birth, but he has a different body in the next birth. Classic example is Prabhupada said, what is the next body that the ex-Prime Minister of India got? So Prabhupada commented on that. So we may have this human form of body in this life, but are we assured that we can have the same body in the next life? No. The conditioned soul may have one kind of body in the present birth, no fixed body, but transmigrates from one body to another. The Lord, however, does not do so. Whenever he appears, he does so in the same original body by his internal potency. So what is the difference? Another difference, major difference, that we appear by the material energy, the external energy, illusionary energy, whereas the Lord appears by his internal energy. What is it called? Atma Mayaya. Sambhavami Atma Mayaya. By my, Prabhupada writes here, Atma Maya means by my internal energy. So by the internal energy, he remembers everything. And what is the characteristic of the external energy? That it makes us forget. Avranatmika and Prakshepatmika. Avran means It covers. It covers our knowledge, it covers our memory. The Lord, however, does not do so. Whenever he appears, he does so in this original body by the eternal potency. In other words, Krishna appears in this material world in his original eternal form with two hands holding a flute. He appears exactly in his eternal body, uncontaminated by the material world. Although he appears in the same transcendental body and is Lord of the universe, it still appears that he takes his birth like an ordinary living entity. And although his body does not deteriorate like a material body, it appears that Lord Krishna grows from childhood to boyhood. Yes, there are so many pastimes. From Bal Lila, he comes to Poganda Lila, and from Poganda Lila, he goes to which Lila? Kumar. Yeah, Kumar. But astonishingly enough, he never ages beyond youth. He always remains ever youthful. At the time of Battle of Kurukshetra, he had many Gad children at home. Or in other words, he had sufficiently aged by material calculation. Still, he looked just like a young man of 20 or 25-year-old. We never see a picture of Krishna in old age because he never grows old like us. Although he is the oldest person in the whole creation, past, present, and future, neither his body nor his intelligence ever deteriorates or changes. Therefore, it is clear that in spite of his being in the material world, he is the same unborn eternal form. Change soul or the subtle body or the gross body. That is only one and the same. Actually, his appearance and disappearance are like the sun's rising, moving before us. Another example is given that the appearance and disappearance of the Lord is like sun rising and sun setting. Every day we see the sun rising. Do we say that sun has taken birth today? And when the sun sets, do we say that the sun has died? No, we know because that the sun has set means tomorrow it will arise again. And when it arises, we also know that it will set again. So his appearance and disappearance is like the rising and the setting of the sun. When the sun is out of sight, we think that the sun is set. And when the sun is before our eyes, we think that the sun is on the horizon. But what is the actual position? The sun is always there. Sometimes we are able to see the sun, we say it is day. And when we are not able to see the sun, what we say? Night. But does the night mean that the sun does not exist? It exists, but it exists elsewhere, outside the range of our vision. Actually, the sun is always in its fixed position, but owing to our defective, inefficient senses, we calculate the appearance and disappearance of the sun in the skies. And because Lord Krishna appearance and disappearance are completely different from that of an ordinary common living entity, it is evident that he is eternal blissful knowledge by the internal potency. And he is never contaminated by material nature. The Vedas also confirm that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unborn, yet still he appears to take birth in multi-manifestations. The Vedic supplementary literature also confirms that even though the Lord appears to be taking his birth, he is still without change of body. In the Bhagavatam, he appears before his mother as Narayan, a four-hand and the decorations of the 6 kinds of full opulences. Sorry, little louder. Where? At? Yes, at Mathura. He appeared before Devaki and Vasudev. So he exhibited 4 hands and decoration of 6 hands of full opulences. His appearance in his original eternal form is his causeless mercy, bestowed upon the living entities so that they can concentrate on the Supreme Lord as he is. So his appearance in his original eternal form is his causeless mercy. Out of his compassion and mercy he appears, bestowed upon the living entities so that they can concentrate on the Supreme Lord as he is, and not on mental concoctions or imaginations, which is the impersonalist wrongly think the Lord's form to be. The word Maya or Atmaya refers to the Lord's causeless mercy. According to Vishwakosh dictionary, the Lord is conscious of all his previous appearance and disappearance, but a common living entity forgets everything about his past body as soon as he gets another body. He is the Lord of all living entities because he performed wonderful and superhuman activities while he is on earth. Therefore, the Lord is always the same absolute truth and is without differentiation between his forms and self, or between his quality and body. A question may now be raised as to why the Lord appears and disappears in this world. This is explained in next verse. Hare Krishna. So we discussed how Krishna's appearance is completely different as compared to the appearance of all other living entities, even in this human form as well. Although he is unborn, still he takes birth. And even if he seems to be taking birth, he remains Ishvara of everyone. And how he appears? He appears by his own Maya, Atma. Okay, Hare Krishna. So I'll stop here. It is almost 9 to past 9. So any discussion, any question? So we should understand these verses. If we do not know how God is great, then what we will try in the entire life? What will be the attempt? Huh? Not clear. Yourself. We will try to be God. This is what everyone is trying. They don't accept the authority of the Supreme Lord. Why? Because they think they can become God. Huh? What brain we have? Where is the question of brain? That is what Prabhupada is saying. What kind of brain we have? Which kind of brain? Demoniac. What the demoniac brain does? Self-destruction. Self-destruction. Okay, any question? Regarding? Our soul? Yes. Yeah. When there is said that what is the quality of the soul? It is unborn. Only the body takes birth. So if the soul is unborn, so that means there is no question of new soul. The soul means that it is outside the purview of time. So which is outside the purview of time, that means is there anything old and new? Old and new is related to what? Related to matter. This is one of our topic, spirit versus matter. So matter has transformation of old and new. The soul is ever fresh. It is the same. Okay. Now ask your question. There are 8,400,000 species of life. And where? In 14 planetary systems. And Earth is one of the planets. And they keep transmigrating from one body to another body, from one species to another species, from one planet to another planet. Do you know the count of other planets? Then how do we say that the population is increasing or decreasing? Okay, बोलिए. भगवान के अवतार में अलग अलग अवतार में अलग अलग शक्तियां होती हैं. जैसे अभी हमने बताया ब्रह्मा जी का अगर अवतार होता है तो कितने परसेंट होता है? 78%. अगर शिव जी का अवतार होता है तो ज्यादा होती है. इट इज आई थिंक 84%. विष्णु का अवतार होता है तो कितना है? 93%. 93%. तो हर में सारा पूरा एग्जिबिट नहीं करते हैं. जिस पर्पस के लिए आते हैं, जो मिशन होता है उसको अकम्प्लिश करने के लिए जितना चाहिए उतना ही. अब जैसे मच्छर को मारना है, उसके लिए राइफल निकालने की जरूरत नहीं. जरूरत है क्या? तो उसका काम किससे चल जाएगा? एक छोटे से डंडे से ही चल जाएगा. ये सब दिया हुआ है. ये सब हमारे आचार्यों ने दिया है कि कौन से अवतार में कितना एग्जीबिट करते हैं. अलग अलग अवतारों के अलग अलग कैटेगरीज है. यस ब्रो. लिटिल लाउडर, वॉइस इज नॉट कमिंग. प्रभु हरि बोल. नेक्स्ट बार स्पीकर दे दो ना, माइक दो. ये रखा है एंड इट इज नॉट बीइंग यूज्ड. टिपिकल डल ब्रेन. पानी दे दो. एक मिनट. लेट इट बी ऑन ना.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
थोड़ा
When the
volume
soul,
too loud. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji,
Correct.
when the soul transmigrates from one body to another body,
Yes.
so the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and thoughts, so they also goes with the soul.
How the transmigration takes place? So many times they have explained. The subtle body carries the soul from one body to another body. The soul, where is the soul encased, or where is the soul conditioned? In the subtle body. So what has not changed? Soul has not changed. And what has not changed? Subtle body has not changed.
Then why do you forget?
Huh?
There's a cell in subtle bodies transmigrating from one body.
तो पीछे रह जाओ ना. वॉल्यूम भी कम कर दीजिए.
The subtle body going with the soul.
Subtle body carries the soul, Baba.
Then why you will forget? The cell subtle body is going.
That is the law of material nature. Otherwise, now you have taken birth, you have a seminal father and mother. If you remember, then what you will have, whether you relationship you have, you cannot. It does. It is called Avran hours. Okay. If the child is born to the parent, he will say, I am not your child. My father is from my past life. Then he says, if you are not my child, then why will I nourish you? I will throw you out, go to your father. What will be the situation? There will be so much chaos. Okay. Give the mic. Please give the mic.
Prabhuji,
Yeah, speak in the mic, it is on.
I learned that with meditation, we can remember our past words.
You try. You try. I know for sure if we study Bhagavad Gita and apply Bhagavad Gita, we can change our future. That is more important. Even if you go back, what can you change? Can you change your past? So what is the use? What is the purpose? What we can change for sure is our future. That we should do. Huh? Yes.
Many people say that the child is not.
Yes. It is samskar means the impressions. And where are the impressions? In the mind. So whatever is the impression of the previous life, it is carried to the next through the mind, through the subtle body. So we should have good impressions. That is why I called the child to come and sit here and here. So that impression will go in the heart. Although there is troublesome. Okay, very important. Some child he comes, you give him the toy, what he will do, he will turn the toy upside down. You've seen? And he will start taking the screw out and doing something. We have seen some of the child, they will pick up the kartal and start playing. They will pick up the mridanga and start playing. They have not learned in this life. Where is the impression coming from? From the past life. So it is there. It is there. Okay, I'll end up here. Thank you very much. Although the numbers are few, it will always be few. This transcendental knowledge, this yoga is very rare. Very fortunate those who can be in this yoga. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the assembly devotees. Hare Krishna.